Hello, my name is D.I.Y Production. Welcome to step number 1. What hardware should you use? Controller-wise and button-wise. Stay tuned.
This video is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. Thank you for each of you who are a supporter on Patreon. You thinking about supporting D.I.Y Production and his community? Think about Patreon. Each month we're doing a giveaway for only the Patreons. We're giving out a game that is worth usually around $50 or more each single month for you guys, for saying thank you for being part of my Patreon supporters. Head over to www.patreon.com/Delta Productions to get all the information.
So this is a plug-and-play solution, and why do I say it's a plug-and-play solution? It's simple. It has plugs, and you plug in your switch, and it works right off the bat. And it comes with a wire, and the wires, you're able to plug your switch directly in there, or you could cut that off and just solder it directly to your switch if you wish. That's fine also. And then you take the connector and you plug it in, and it's done. You then connect this board directly to the computer, and the computer sees this already as a controller. So just go directly in game, and then assign this yellow button to light, and you're done. It's that simple. It's a plug-and-play solution. The problem with this board, could be a problem for you, could not be a problem, is it only has 12 outputs, so 12 buttons. You do have some extra axis here. You have X and Y axis here, but not every game will see that as a button press. So you'll have to do some research to know if you're able to assign those 4 axes here. So right off the bat, you only have 12 with a possible 4 or more. It depends. If you're playing farming or ATS, ETS2, those will be registered as a button. That's not a problem. So technically that will be 16 outputs. Price-wise, it's really cheap. It's about $14-15 Canadian. So it's a really good solution for a plug-and-play solution here. The board is not too small, not too big, fits in my hand like this, so it's a good start. Now let's take a look at this other controller that you might want to use. This specific one is a ProMicro. It is based with the language of Arduino. That's how you program it. So this little baby is not programmed. When you plug it into the computer, you won't see it as a controller. You have to do some programming to do that. There's also some boards called Tinsy. It's the same concept as this ProMicro with the same language, Arduino, and then you still need to program those. The difference between the ProMicro and let's say the other Tinsys is how many inputs and outputs you have. This specific one, I believe, only has 12, but the Tinsy, I believe, the small one has 20, and then the big one has up to 32. When I say you need to program it, I mean you need to go to the Arduino software and you need to enter some codes. Mind you, the codes are already out there. So basically all you have to do is copy, paste, upload, and you're usually good to go. What's good about those little controllers is you could program them to do a little more than just send out a keystroke or send out button press. You could program them that if you press button 1, then there'll be a little light that turns on also. And if you press it again, it will turn off. So this is somewhat of a good solution if you want to do custom builds. This little ProMicro only costs $5. Pretty cheap. 12 buttons, same output as this. By the way, really more smaller than that. Look at that. Really more small. But you have to solder on your own wires and you have to program it. That is the downside to it, but a really good solution if you're into those things. So now let's talk about buttons. What kind of buttons are you going to put on your button box? So here I have a couple of them. I do have here a push button type, a toggle switch, This is a push button type, but it latches and then unlatches. And then you have a rotary system here that you're able to turn. So what kind of button should you choose? I would say if you're using a board like this, the plug and play solution, I would go for possibly all push buttons. Why? Because when you push a button, release it, it sends out a pulse, or it sends out a keystroke saying that, press on this button. So when you press it again, it sends out another keystroke. The problems with toggles is if you toggle it on, it will stay on. When you toggle it off, it will do nothing because you're just basically turning it off, and then you have to toggle it back on. So let's say you do lights in Farming Simulator, you decide to turn it on, it will turn on, that's not a problem. But turn it off, you'll have to close it and resend another pulse to say to close it. If you use a micro controller like this, like the ProMicro, you could program that in your software, that when you go up, it sends out a keystroke, and when you go down, it sends out another keystroke, instead of always going up and down and then go back up and down to turn off the thing. So that's one thing that a ProMicro here would actually be really good for, is this. Some games though, mind you, some games like Elite Dangerous will allow you in-game to have a toggle mode. So when you turn it on, the game sees it as on, will register it as on, and when you turn it off, the system or the game will see it as off, and it will turn off whatever system that you decided to put that with. Same thing with ATS, ETS2. Some buttons are able to act like a toggle, so that's good. For farming, it doesn't work that way, sadly enough. So when you toggle it up, that's what you have to do. You have to program it in there, or you just have to keep on flicking that switch until it turns off. Rotary, same thing. It acts like a toggle, so when you turn it on, it will stay to that position, will send out that keystroke until you turn it off to the other one, and so on and so forth. So maybe that is not something you would want to plug with this, more with something you're able to modify like that. So that is the hardware that you need to figure out before you build your button box, what hardware you're going to use. And first thing is what microcontroller you're going to use. Plug and play, or soldering and programming. That's up to you. Stay tuned for episode number 2, which will be designing the box itself.